Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Green, and I am the Director of Supplier Diversity at NGLCC. First and foremost, my colleague Sean Franklin and I would like to thank each and every one of you who participated in the inaugural NGLCC Communities of Color Initiative Matchmaker Program last month. And a big thank you to our wonderful corporate partner, Johnson & Johnson, who sponsored the great event. It is now my pleasure to welcome you today to our final NGLCC Communities of Color Initiative event of 2020, a special NGLCC Crossroads and Conversation program with Reggie Greer. While it's been a trying year, to say the least, we hope you found value in our programs this year, and we look forward to what lies ahead in 2021. Today's conversation is sure to be a powerful one, and please be sure to join us for the virtual happy hour after this program. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to turn it over to our co-founder and president at NGLCC, Justin Nelson, who will lead today's conversation. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, Alicia, thank you so much, and thanks for the work that you do, not just on supplier diversity and the Communities of Color Initiative, but on everything that you do for NGLCC and our stakeholders. It's much appreciated. We are thrilled to be here today. I am Justin Nelson, the co-founder and president here at NGLCC. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And we couldn't think of a better way to end this year's Crossroads and Conversations than with our friend Reggie Greer. It's no secret that we have a president-elect. Yesterday's Electoral College proved that to be fact, although most of us have known that now for 40 some odd days. But we are thrilled to be having this conversation, not just about Reggie's work on the campaign, but also about who Reggie is as an individual, what his philosophy is for leadership, and what we can all do to be better advocates for one another as we move out of this pandemic year into next year through the vaccine and then on to some sort of normalcy. So let's get to it. Let's talk a little bit about today's conversation with Reggie Greer. As we mentioned, he was a member of the Biden-Harris campaign, the first LGBT person of color to head LGBTQ outreach for a presidential campaign. Reggie did that as the LGBTQ plus vote director for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. Prior to joining the campaign, he spent 4 years as director of constituent engagement at the Victory Fund and Victory Institute, helping elect LGBTQ plus candidates to public office. Prior to his tenure with our friends at Victory, Reggie served at the Department of Transportation as a special assistant to then Cabinet Secretary Fox. And in 2016, Reggie was appointed to serve on Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser's LGBTQ Advisory Committee. He started his work here in Washington, D.C. On the staff at the Democratic National Committee. In 2009, after receiving his Bachelor of Arts in Government and History from Georgetown University, having concentrated his studies in education and social policy. But as I like to say, the best thing about Reggie is just Reggie the person. So join me in welcoming our friend Reggie Greer to the conversation.
Hello, how are you?
Hey Reggie, doing well.
Good to be here.
Well, we know you've had a busy day and a busy, not only couple of weeks, but several months. So we appreciate you taking time as we wind down 2020 to chat a little bit with us.
Yeah, it's been a busy year, and I know a trying one for all of us. But it's conversations like this that give me hope for the future. And so, Justin, it's always good to see you.
Not everyone in the audience gets to know Reggie the way that we have been able to get to know you over the last several years. So maybe we can start out just by you telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background. What are some things that you want the audience to know as we go into this conversation? Then I have some questions for you. Some of the members of the team have a few, and then we're going to open it up for some audience Q&A towards the end.
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, I think that I would love for people to know that I am excited about the time that we're in, or at least the future. I'm excited about the future. I know that, thinking about the pain and the and just the anxiety inducing time that we live in has not been the best for us this year, but I do still believe that the future is bright. That's probably the thing about me that that is most enduring, is that I'm extremely optimistic. That I love conversations like this because I like engagement. I think that we all have a part to play in building out the um, a society and systems that connect people, to conversations and other institutions that they may not be connected to. We have a role in ensuring that our government is reflective of our voices. So I think that people are often like, "Oh, you always that happy?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, it's true. I am because I think I draw on the strength of of those who surround me." And let me tell you, after a year like this, where you get a chance to do LGBTQ work for a presidential campaign, I'm extremely inspired by LGBTQ plus people from all walks of life, Black, Brown, API, LGBTQ youth, trans and non-binary folk, whose resiliency really gave me a close-up view of just how strong our community is in the face of adversity.
I can attest to your sort of happy-go-lucky energy that you put out there. We had some conversations during the campaign, and I know the stress that can happen when you're in the midst of that. But I don't think we ever did a call where I couldn't hear the smile, or when we were doing video that we couldn't see it. So we certainly appreciate it, and obviously you're an inspiration not only to us, but to really millions of LGBTQ individuals out there that are looking at what they can do to get involved. In fact, you authored a really amazing article for our partners at Out Magazine entitled "Joe Biden Will Fight for Queer People with Disabilities Like Me." I'm just sort of curious, what does embracing all of who you are, all the communities you represent, mean to you, and has it made you a better leader?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's made me, it's obviously made me a better person. I think that, when people used to say, I remember as a kid, and this is before I had come out, you know, um, do you think you would have been a different person if you hadn't gone through, having 18 surgeries, or if you didn't have a disability? And I said, I wouldn't want to know that person. That even then I was proud that I was proud that the journey I was on had taking me down a very interesting path. Even if that path was sometimes painful, it was still my own journey, and I think that that gave me a lot of like strength in the time that times I didn't know I needed it, but I did need it whenever I came out. So I think on this campaign it was very much a daily reminder of just how obvious it is that people just want to be heard. They want leaders who will listen to them. They want a president who will fight for them and reflect their values and their humanity. And I said that if you there was a lot of things, a day would go by, like, I wish I could have done that. I wish I didn't get to this, or that didn't go well. I at least said to myself, if you can just show up as yourself every day, and this is a part of extending grace to yourself, right? If you can just show up as yourself, your full self every day, that you've done a lot. I think that just telling myself that allowed me to sort of, go on each and every day. But I wrote that article really because I wanted people to know just how much it mattered to President-elect Biden, that his campaign and his government fight for and reflect all of us, and knowing that all of us have different intersections that are worth celebrating and are valuable, and that just excited now again that we have the opportunity to build a government that can actually do that.
Absolutely. I was thinking here as you were speaking, for so much of life, people have tried to put us in one box or another. So you were a Black man, then you were the gay man, you were the person with a disability. Really, Reggie's all of those things and all of those experiences. In fact, you grew up in Texas. My co-founder grew up in Texas. I grew up in Wyoming. I have to believe that even that experience, while sometimes very difficult and very hard, also shaped the person that you are today. Do you want to talk a little bit about your background, upbringing, how that's influenced you to the person you are today?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you grew up Wyoming and Texas, are such similar, I'm sure, stories between the both of us. But, growing up in a place like Wichita Falls, Texas, it really did teach me about how to really embrace myself at an early age. I was sometimes the only person like me in the room, and as scary as that is for all of us. And I know anyone who's out there who's a member of a marginalized community, especially everyone listening who's a member of our community, know this feeling of just, of having to carry the burden of being the only one in the room at a given time. But I think what that experience did for me is that even as a growing up in a Baptist church and then going to the evangelical church or being at school in the place like Wichita Falls, I was able to find people around me from all walks of life who loved me for me, right? And I think that's a testament to just when we think about these polarizing times that we live in, that anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country, you can find people who are loving, who believe in inclusivity, who believe in justice, and we shouldn't segment ourselves. By not segmenting ourselves, we're able to have our eyes open long enough to see not only the beauty around us, but to find people around us, wherever we may live, that are willing to fight alongside us. And I think that that's how we're going to win the next fights in the future. Is finding people around us in our communities who are going to want to fight with us.
I think that's well said. We saw that, the headlines sort of led us down the road of Trump fighting to overturn things, but we sort of lost sight of the bigger, more beautiful picture of the real tapestry of people and causes that came together to frankly win by 7 million votes in the popular vote when it was all said and done, the most of any candidate in history. It's truly remarkable. I want to invite my colleagues in to share in the questions here. Sean Franklin, who heads up our Supplier Engagement Center, has a question for you. Sean, you want to go ahead and ask?
Sure. Thanks, Justin and Reggie. Pleasure meeting you. And just before I ask my question, thank you for all you did to help us get our new president elected and keep up the good work. So for our LGBTQ businesses or business owners on the line, any advice you can give those who may be seeking to do work with the federal government or the incoming administration?
Absolutely. And it's worth repeating that President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris are, looking to everyone to be a part of their Build Back Better agenda, and they're looking to, all regions of the country and all backgrounds as people who may have the expertise to help move us forward. And the best part about being able to work with NGLCC throughout the summer and in the spring, summer, and fall is just knowing, listening to the stories of all the LGBTQ plus business owners who, were part of, the billions of dollars that are brought into the economy, and all the good work that each and every one of them do in the communities that they serve in. But just getting to know them as people, just how they got, how the journeys that we all are on led them to a point where they could do the type of service that they are performing. But I would just encourage people, NGLCC and other LGBTQ groups have joined into a wonderful initiative that is helping to recruit talent from our community. That is the Presidential Appointments Initiative. There's also buildbackbetter.gov and applying there and making sure that you're getting your materials in there. I would suggest for anyone who's LGBTQ plus to do both. So that you're being flagged by the coalition of LGBTQ organizations that are working to make sure that there's representation in government from our community, but then also making sure that the transition team itself has your materials and that you're on our radar as someone that wants to serve the country in that capacity. I also think, if I can make this point too, Sean, is that we have lived for, I think over the past several decades, it's been this pervasive argument that, people like us from our backgrounds, to be LGBTQ plus or people of color, Black folks, and that government hasn't been the first line of work, or public service hasn't been the first line of work that's thrown out there to people as a possibility. And I think it hurts us in two ways, right? It hurts us because that's not true. We know how important it is to have good voices in government because of the responsibilities that government is there to manage, and the priorities that is there to lead. But the second part is that it prevents diverse voices from entering into the government to actually do that work. So you're left with a government that's in theory ill-equipped to handle equity issues, either racial equity or climate equity. You're ill-equipped then to handle their approach to an issue and building an interagency team that can actually allow you to think holistically about a problem happening in your community. So I would really encourage folks to get involved, and if a presidential appointment isn't something that you're interested in, there are local appointments to cities that they're looking for business leaders like you to rely on and for guidance, state level as well. So I would end with that.
Great, thank you. That was a lot of good information. Appreciate that.
John, did you have anything else you wanted to ask right now?
Sure. So, and you kind of touched on this just a little bit. As a Black gay man, and given we now have our first ever Black Southeast Asian and woman vice president incoming, what is your perspective on that?
Oh my goodness, just knowing how incredibly powerful of a voice that Vice President-elect Harris has is exciting enough for me. But knowing that she is, she has the quote. I'm gonna mess it up about. I might be the first, but I'm not the last. I think that you can apply that in so many ways. That's what I'm really excited about. Is just knowing that she is going to be at the forefront of changing the face of our government, in seeing more Black people, more AAPI people, more LGBTQ people, more Black, and AAPI and LGBTQ folks, people who have multiple identities and can bring those to the table, and also thinking about the ways that LGBTQ people can show up in the fields that they work in, right? And putting people into positions that people wouldn't think, oh, there's LGBTQ people doing that work too. And I think that's exciting. I think that you're gonna, this administration, and this is the work that we're really trying to lead on, has the really strong potential of making a break from the past and really looking into the future with boldness and with a vision.
Great, thank you. That makes me even more excited about the next 4 years. So happy that we are in this day and age right now.
Thanks, Sean. And for those of you that are tuning in too, you're going to have a chance to ask questions. Please put them into the chat or the Q&A window. Sean and Alicia are going to be monitoring that. We'll get to that a little bit later. you made a great mention in that last answer about representation, about showing up, about, having more diversity in the halls of power. You did a lot of work with the Victory Fund for, I think, 4 or 5 years you were there. This last election, I think we elected over 311 or so new LGBTQ elected officials. What kind of a place marker is that, and what do we still have to do?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you hearkened back to my days at Victory, and I like to always give this quote, and this is just a testament to the work that we're all doing, and the work I was proud to be a part of, with Mayor Denise Parker and the team at Victory, Ruben Gonzalez, even Aisha Moody Mills, and she was there, when I first joined Victory. But in that time period, from 2016 to 2020, when I left to join the campaign, we had 456 elected officials in the country, and then when I left, we were at 860. And I think that shows you how much progress we can make in a short period of time. But for those of us who are LGBTQ, we already know that. We already know how powerful our voices are. We already know that we put our heads down and we do the work. We already know that we know how to coalition build. We already know that we're like leading, and we can own businesses, and we can fight discrimination and do all the things that we've had to do to survive and to liberate the rest of our community. But sometimes it's just worth reminding ourselves of all of that, because then that hopefully we don't take the foot off the gas. So what else is left to do now is to make sure that we're getting people into appointments in the administration, in this administration, and that we have equitable representation there, and that we are fighting to get more people elected, and that we are and I think that in doing all of that, we'll be able to not only just show and demonstrate to LGBTQ plus youth that now when you look on your television screen, or maybe your Zoom box for now, that you see someone just like you, who's non-binary, who's genderqueer, who's Black and gay, who is lesbian, who's trans, that not only that that they will be able to do that, but also that the issues that need LGBTQ voices in them will have them there at the table.
So we're going to get really deep and philosophical and political for a couple of questions, and then I want to bring Alicia into the conversation as well. But sort of two ends of the spectrum here, in a sense, because we need more senators with the kind of philosophy and commitment to racial equality that will support the kind of legislation that needs to move forward. So let me start there. People are sort of sick and tired, and as a political junkie, I have a little juice left, but I'm kind of sick and tired of the politics too. But we still have a month to go, not quite a month. How important are the races in Georgia, and what can people be doing, or should people be doing, to see that we can affect real seismic change by changing the dynamics of the U.S. Senate?
Apologies there. I turned off my camera instead of unmuting myself. I think you're right. I'm putting my Out for Biden hat back on for a second and saying, make calls, do what you can to volunteer. I think that the races in Georgia sort of speak to the future of what we're going to have to, the future of our movements, and how important it is that we take the lessons that we learned from this past campaign of building a broad coalition, a diverse coalition, and not giving up on that, right? I think that our people win whenever we do coalition work well. I think that in the past we have taken coalition work for granted, but now we understand that President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris aren't the president-elect and vice president-elect without Black and brown people, and without LGBTQ voters, and without AAPI voters, and without strong coalitions from our cities and voters from rural areas, and that it matters, people of faith too. And so it matters that we emphasize that work on the campaign to do that, So whatever spaces that you find yourself in, that it is important that you continue talking about that moving forward. If people are reaching out to you and asking you, how do we build a winning campaign or a winning initiative or a successful business? Is all about finding and recruiting the coalition that you need to make that venture successful. And so when I think about Georgia, and my point of privilege here, I actually am the same year as John Ossoff at Georgetown, and he's one of the first people I met at Georgetown, like in that awkward cafeteria, freshman orientation setting, and we both really talked about and we're proud of the fact that we're both in the South and how cool it was to be in this space, and I never forget just how friendly and affable he was, and I was so proud to support him whenever he ran for Congress the first time, and just watching him sort of thrive. And I would love more than anything to call him senator-elect on in January, and he's going to do a tremendous job, having worked for John Lewis and understanding Georgians in a way that I think that we're all going to have to try to understand one another moving forward, to do the type of coalition work that I was talking about. Knowing that he knows that will make him an even better senator. And of course, I'm ecstatic about Reverend Warnock and just all the work Stacey Abrams is doing. But getting them elected will also be crucial to making sure that the president-elect has an easier path to enacting and fighting for some of the LGBTQ priorities that he wants to make a hallmark of his presidency. With that said, we are most certainly moving ahead with ensuring that LGBTQ issues are a priority in the upcoming administration. And what a thrill it is to have a president-elect and a vice president-elect who are willing to be out front and center on our issues.
I couldn't agree more with you. And, I was proud when we made our first presidential endorsement in history in 2016. I was even more so this year. And not that we're, a partisan fire-breathing organization. We really try to work where it's best for our stakeholders and what's in the best interest of our businesses. But it's undeniable that the choice was between an administration, a philosophy that had failed all of us, and the ability to be a part of building something back better. And there were people, it was probably 98 too, but there were some people that reached out to me and weren't happy with us making an endorsement. And I think now, 42 days after being declared the president-elect, what we've endured, what's gone on, we are more proud of it today, if possible, than the day we actually made that an endorsement. And that's because this president-elect is putting together a cabinet that looks like America. He is giving the vice president-elect not just a lip service to be at the table, but a reason and depth and opportunity that will benefit all of us. And that sort of leads me to my next question. Then I want to invite Alicia in. Are we setting the expectation so high that they'll be able to meet it? Or what do we need to do as the American people to help lift them up to meet that expectation? And I specifically mean around racial justice and racial violence. It is our time to be the ally, right? And do everything we can. So what can we do? Are we setting the expectation too high? And so be it, but what can we do to help them realize that?
Yeah, I think that the LGBTQ plus community just has to keep doing what it's doing, right? I think that, and I think that, Justin, to your point about being proud of any sort of decision that you make after the fact, it's just an indication knowing that you always knew where to go in the first place, right? And I think for the fact that the LGBTQ plus community is inclusive of all of us, that there are millions of Black LGBTQ people who are out there talking about racial injustice and what it means to push forward an equitable agenda, are in these spaces. I think gives us all the more opportunity to keep bringing these kinds of roundtables and conversations together. Thinking about the LGBTQ Latino community, thinking about the people with disabilities who are also members of our community. We can reach out and find any intersection that we want, and that is a blessing of being LGBTQ. And that's why I'm always so proud to be a member of our community, because I can reach out and find anyone to learn from, and anyone to include, and anyone to be a part of my own journey. So that's what we need to do more of, because then that will allow us to ensure that we're showing up the right way in the spaces that we need to show up in.
Well, NGLCC is an ally there, and we're proud to have many people of color in leadership positions on our board and in our organization. And we were not late to the party. We've been talking about these issues more than just 2020, but with added urgency. And as I've often said, I will never know what it's like to be a Black man walking down the street with a police cruiser driving alongside me. I'm smart enough to know it's wrong. I'm smart enough to know that we have a mission here, and at NGLCC, absolutely, we've been saying it, we'll continue to say it. Black Lives Matter. It's why we've had so much success with our Communities of Color initiative, and why we're not going to stop. We are not taking our foot off the gas pedal, and being inspired by leaders like you and conversations like this only reinforces that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. So thanks for helping reinforce that value proposition for us today. With that said, I'd like to invite Alicia Greer, our Director of Supplier Diversity, and Alicia has a couple of questions for you.
Thank you, Justin. And I also want to just say, thank you for your vision for NGLCC Communities of Color Initiative. It has been great so far, and I can't, wait to see how we grow in the future. So thank you for that. And Reggie, thank you so much for joining us. And I just wanted to mention this comment that somebody had about they have a speech impediment, and how they are just happy to know that we have a president-elect that also have a speech impediment, but he is very confident in that. And so, we're talking about just being represented. So you're talking about how the Biden-Harris, President-elect Biden and President-elect Vice President Harris are fighting for, the LGBT community and show representation of the community. In your opinion, how would the Biden-Harris administration fight for the opportunities for LGBTQ business owners, especially folks that live at the intersection of multiple identities, such as LGBTQ business owners of color, those with disabilities, veterans, and so forth?
No, absolutely. And I'm so glad that the person posed that question in the box. I might say, for me personally too, having had 18 surgeries, having started off my elementary school career, taking years of speech therapy to adjust from a wired shut jaw at 3, which affected the way I learned how to speak as a child. I very much each and every day saw myself in the president-elect, and I very much got very teary-eyed in the Democratic National Convention when the little boy who also had the speech impediment, really brought the whole nation to tears. Because it really was a stark reminder of visibility, and then having that visibility at the highest levels really matters. And so, I started there by saying, the second joy for me of being on the campaign was just knowing that I didn't have to do all the work in telling the rest of my colleagues where LGBTQ people were, right? There were people who were leading the disability portfolio who say, Reggie, we don't want to leave them out. Tell us where to go to, who to talk to, who should we, make sure that these policies, do justice by this community. For service members, especially the ones who are trans and taking the brunt of this administration's hatred, knowing that LGBTQ plus service members were being thought of actively, and that we were designing policies in the administration, around healthcare and other benefits that our service members deserve. That LGBTQ people were being thought of. Thinking about the Lift Every Voice agenda when that was put together, and that now, as Black and brown civil rights leaders are speaking very emphatically about what the president-elect's agenda should look like and what his administration should look like. That even in those conversations, especially through initiatives like the Presidential Appointments Initiative and others, that they're actively saying, well, where are our Black and brown LGBTQ folks as well, and making sure that those folks show up. So that's the first thing. It's just knowing that there's a team around that is, I think, a breath of fresh air, but also very much in the mold of what we have seen this year, in the past several years, that it really does matter that people aren't siloed, that issues aren't siloed, that we can, be able to at least point out when certain communities are being left out or aren't at the table. And then as far as issues are concerned, I think about the impact of COVID-19 and just how many ways you can start to demonstrate how it has affected different people, and that's a possibility as we build back better the economy, and as we help to get people healthy again, healthy and keep people healthy. That people living on the margins, like people with who are living with HIV, and people who are having unstable housing, are homeless, who are low income, in LGBTQ. Thinking about LGBTQ youth in how whether being at home or not has impacted them differently. That we're actively talking about that right now, so that the policies that come out of this administration aren't one size fits all, that they address people's lived realities, that we're hearing those stories, and that those are going into the processes that will allow the president-elect and his team to do the best on behalf of all of us.
No, awesome. And that is really great to hear. And as President-elect Biden is appointing his cabinet, nominating his cabinet picks, just your opinion, how do you see the nomination of Congresswoman Fudge aiding in the minority community development?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm thrilled that the president-elect chose Congresswoman Fudge, Secretary-designate Fudge. I think that there's lots of conversations already happening around housing issues, especially given how many LGBTQ youth are homeless, how many LGBTQ older adults experience issues around stable housing. The rules that have come out of this current administration, where members of our community can access homeless shelters and housing. So this issue is at the forefront of a lot of what we want to do to make sure that we are pushing into a new era for equality. And I know that she will receive all the work and information that we're already compiling, so that she can hit the ground running on day one. I think she'll be a champion. I think she'll be great. lots of cabinet announcements happening, and very much reflective of all of our communities. And certainly stay on your toes for announcements. Here soon for all of us.
Reggie, I think it's happened while we've been on this
Yeah.
call.
No.
We have our first cabinet designee that is openly gay, and Mayor Pete Buttigieg for Secretary of Transportation that was just announced. So true to their word, the Biden-Harris team is putting together a cabinet that looks like America. And I couldn't agree more on Congresswoman Fudge. She's done so much for so many in her role, and she'll be amazing at HUD. I want to remind folks that there will be a networking happy hour after this event. We will be dropping the link into the chat a little bit closer to conclusion. So please stick around for that. Just some time to chat, get to know one another, so on and so forth. And we're about to go to audience questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean and Alicia, who have been watching the chat box and the Q&A box, that have a couple of audience questions for Reggie. So Alicia, Sean, take it away.
Great, thanks, Justin. So one question that we do have from our audience, it says, should we be worried about Amy Barrett and her conservative views on LGBTQ people? Is there anything that President-elect Biden could do to continue to support our rights?
I will say, from the get-go, very much pleased, I think, by the ruling the other day on the Indiana family, and happy that the justices came to the right conclusion there. It doesn't mean that our work isn't done, but I think that this is more reason for this community, the NGLCC family of business owners and leaders who are advocating on behalf of LGBTQ families each and every day, to stay fierce and to stay active, because we know that not everyone at any level of government shares our views, whether it be in the state legislature, the Supreme Court, places around the government at the federal level and Congress, and so it is really up to us to make sure that we're pushing those that work out there. I think I also find it interesting with the Indiana case is that Obergefell and other cases were cited as precedent, and that is the reality of it is that when we make progress and when we win and when love wins, that's the first step. It's hard to undo. And I am very hopeful for the future because I know that if we can stay active, we can keep pushing our country forward.
Great, sorry, still muted. Thank you for that. I appreciate that answer. Those are the key words we've been hearing all summer. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Alicia, did you want to add a question?
Sure, thank you, Sean. So Reggie, we had somebody to ask, do you think that there is enough representation in Congress for people with disabilities?
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. No, I think that there's so far to go. And you think about how hard it is for people with disabilities to even run for office, right? And that's a part of my life's work, I think, is ensuring that people who have a physical disability or a mental disability, disability you can't see, understand just the challenges that exist around running, so that they can be successful and win and be in those positions. But especially in Congress or at any level, there aren't enough of us at the table to make to make policy. And I was so fortunate, I think, in the summertime to be with the president-elect then to roll out the disability agenda, and also Senator Timmy Duckworth, and I think we even mentioned that, is that there's so few of us, people with disabilities in office, well, not me per se, but just a few of us who are visible, and people like her rather, who are in office. And I would love to see more.
I was going to say perhaps it's time for a gay Black congressman with a disability to show folks up on Capitol Hill how to really do things, Reggie. You don't have to announce your candidacy here today, but
Yeah, yeah, maybe one day. Oh, absolutely.
for future opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I can tell you that's in my future. I'm calling you first, Justin, Alicia, and Sean.
You will be there. We will be there. Back to you, Alicia, Sean. Sorry about that.
No worries. That was a great endorsement.
No problem. And yes, thank you. So we have this question that says the Equality Act was passed by the House, but stalled in the Senate. If we are unable to secure the 2 Georgia Senate seats, is there a plan to get the Senate to move on this important legislation? Follow up to add to this question is there something that the Biden administration plans to push during the crucial first 100 days?
Oh, absolutely. I would just say on the top, nothing's changed from the campaign as far as where our issues, are as a priority. I think that the president-elect was adamant in the campaign about we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And so as we are building back our economy, as we are, now that the vaccine is being distributed across the country, and that process will play itself out as we turn the tide and turn the corner from COVID-19, that we can also, fight on all of these other priorities too. And so there are definitely conversations happening now around the Equality Act. It's such a big priority for the incoming administration, no matter what the makeup of the Congress is. And that, on all the other priorities, from one I mentioned earlier about, housing, and how it impacts different parts of our community, and on the transgender service members serving in the military, and on conversion therapy, and on gender markers, and on discrimination broadly, that you're going to have an administration that's looking for whatever avenue exists to getting this work done. And I think that honestly, and I would say this to everyone listening on this call now, is that a lot of our success is going to be up to your voice. Standing with you all, bringing your stories to us. And I see one about the stories of like LGBTQ people of color business owners and their successes and struggles, and bringing that to the forefront. For the Biden White House is going to be key to ensuring that we're telling the full story of the country here. And I think that has the effect of also pushing our priorities forward and getting unlikely allies, political allies, to join in on that fight, and to help us get there.
I would just add one thing to that too, Reggie. We talked about this on the campaign on a couple of events that we did with you all. We are very much going to be advocating for LGBT inclusion in federal procurement. We've talked about it with the campaign. We will talk about it with the new administration so that we can address some of these issues, so that business owners that may have intersectionality don't have to check one of those identities at the door to be a part of this. So our persons of color, LGBTBEs, can show up as a Black, lesbian, veteran, all of those identities, and still be able to bid on federal contracts from any one of those vantage points. And we're committed to that. We know the campaign was committed to it. We know the administration will be. So stay tuned on that, because we're going to be reaching out to those of you in the audience to help us push that across the finish line, and look at how we can get that into the Equality Act for what we hope has a different vetting in the Senate next year.
Absolutely.
Alicia, Sean, do we have any other questions, a final question or two before I do a little rapid fire with Reggie to end the conversation?
We definitely do. They keep coming in, Justin. It's just that unmuting the microphone. So Reggie, a question for you. So as far as there are, controversial issues, and those that are like minority LGBT business owners, or just LGBT persons and minority persons who decided to vote on the opposing side. Is there any way of kind of reeling them back, or not reeling them back, but being able to unify them to join, what the Biden administration is planning to do?
No, Alicia, I might say I've probably done that 1,000 times. I totally understand, that's a really good question. And it's actually related. I think I see another question about, how do we talk to people who aren't naturally in our choir, right? And how do we reach out to folks who don't naturally agree with us? I think that there is an opportunity here, and I keep saying this, to build a very, very broad, inclusive network of amplifiers on our issues. And actually, I think that inclusion is such a powerful force that if you're reaching out to people in your life and you're saying, and you're just telling your story, like, hey, neighbor, or hey, community person, or fellow business owner, this policy would affect my life or my children or those that I love like this, and you're telling them those things in personal terms, that can do so much more good than I think people may have forgotten that those kinds of conversations can be that impactful. Again, we live in a polarized time, and I think there's a lot of folks who say, I don't want to talk to those folks, or I don't have anything in common with those folks, and there's certainly folks that are out of reach. Don't get me wrong. And we went through a summer where we experienced forces in our society that were so downright hateful that you can't talk to folks. But those aren't the folks that aren't in our camp. There's a whole large swath of people who, I think that if we are able to just share our stories and do those in personal terms, for example, I may not go to Justin's hometown in Wyoming and be able to actually talk to folks more effectively than Justin can, right? And if Justin can share with folks, and Alicia and Sean, if you were to go back, go wherever you are from, or if you're from the DC area or wherever you're from, and talk to your communities, I may not be able to do that as well as you both can, right? And I think the same example, I had to remember that for myself. There are people that I know in my own life that I have access to and I can talk to about these issues. And one of the more powerful lessons that I experienced is a good friend of mine defriended me on Facebook. I know we've all gone through that, right? And defriending someone on Facebook doesn't mean anything, and I don't want people to read too much into it, right? But I think I heard back from the sibling of that friend or former friend, and said that what they were most worried about is that because I'm LGBTQ, is that I would somehow deceive other fellow folks that I've maybe gone to church with and been in our community, that somehow being LGBTQ is okay. First of all, it's okay, and it's a blessing, right? But that in that moment showed that person's sort of fear that for some reason, me being myself, showing up as myself on social media of all places, would somehow, quote unquote, deceive people into thinking like I think. I was just being myself, right? So, and it reminded me that, like, I wasn't quote unquote proselytizing for the LGBTQ community. I was just being myself. That's my encouragement to everyone, is that if you show up in spaces that you have access to, you have the opportunity there to open some eyes.
No, thank you for that. And, I think a lot of times we do forget to just communicate, just talk about, how the issues can affect you. So, yeah, that was a great answer. And thank you for sharing. And Sean, I think you're going to ask our final and last question.
Yes, I do have the final question, which is a good one, directed towards our wonderful chamber. Do you think the federal government under the Biden administration will recognize the NGLCC supplier diversity certification?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sean. And I'm just so proud and happy that Justin and others, community leaders, have brought us priorities from the LGBTQ business community. And I think that's important to keep doing. As we have been saying, for those of us that are right now part of the transition process, we're still just in the passenger seat and not the driver's seat. So, there are things that, hope that we can have a concrete conversation on as we move forward. But just getting those priorities now are so important, including the supplier diversity, proposal. And I think that's very important that we are stay in communication, that we stay, keep talking about the things that are most important to the community.
Reggie, you're definitely ready to run for office on your answer there. I appreciate that. I will say this: the campaign, the candidate, the team has all been very open to this, and we are not going to stop until we cross the finish line. And I think we've got as good a chance as ever. The campaign has been very open to it. Transition team has our memo. We're going to be reaching out to you that are tuning in and asking about that to help us reassure folks that this is something that is a priority for all of us. So thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Sean, for your part in this. Reggie, we usually end with a rapid fire of a couple of get to know you things about you. I'm going to do just a couple of quick ones because we're a little bit over time now. And I know people want to get to networking. If we can, it looks like someone's already dropped it into the spot there. Just a couple of quick questions off the top of your head. Once we're back to normal and everyone's vaccinated, are we more likely to find you at home watching a movie, at a house party with friends, or swinging from the rafters on 17th Street?
Oh, maybe swinging from the rafters. Definitely out and about. I'm a social butterfly, and all I want to do is see all of my queer friends, my LGBTQ friends, and just be out there in those spaces with them again. On 14th at Trade, at a house party. So all the above, I guess.
Okay, good. Dog, cat, or bird?
Oh, definitely dog. Definitely dog.
Good. If we were going to run into you at a restaurant, what would the cuisine be?
Oh, definitely soul food. Maybe a place that has like barbecue and like as a part of the menu. I'm a Texan through and through, so barbecue.
Would we be more likely to run into you on the ski slope or the beach?
Definitely the beach. Definitely the beach. Even though where I grew up in Texas, I grew up near not near a beach or a mountain. So I love the beach.
Do you read it or do you wait for the movie?
Read it.
Okay. And I think the big question that everyone wants to know is it Beyonce or Gaga?
Oh goodness, I can't. I love our pop diva princess, Lady Gaga. I can't vote against the Queen. Queen Bey all the way.
Yeah. I kind of thought that was going to be the case. I'd let you just pick both or give a draw, but I probably decided wisely. Reggie, thank you for doing this today. Thank you for doing what you have done the last several months, actually the last several years. Every time I'm with you, I feel smarter. I actually feel kinder. You are one of those people that can just bring a smile to someone's face. In this town, I've been here nearly 30 years. You don't find genuine people that often. And that's not a dig on everybody, or maybe it is. Hell, I don't know. I know that we have a good, genuine group at NGLCC. I think we've got one of the best teams in the movement. And when we're able to intersect with people like you doing the good work that you're doing, it just makes us a better organization. And we're all fighting for the same things. And that's dignity, respect, and equity for every single one of us. So thank you so much for the work that you do and just the person you are.
I appreciate those. I appreciate that a lot, Justin. I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate your guidance, and you know, just knowing good folks like you know, Jonathan too, who's a good friend of mine, and I know such a tremendous leader for our community, and meeting people like Sean and Alicia. You know, is again a reason why I think being LGBT is a blessing. But you know, just thank you for your friendship and leadership too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. This concludes our Crossroads and conversation for 2020. We've probably got at least 4, 5, 6 months of virtual programming coming our way for 21. And who knows, we may keep it around for all of next year. We've been able to have some great conversations. Proud to do this in partnership with our Communities of Color initiative. I want to give a big thank you to Alicia and Sean, who team up to bring the programming for Coachee to life, and to all of you for tuning in. If you're joining us in the networking session, please use the link that was provided in the chat box. As always, we want to hear from you. Please feel free to email any of us. If you didn't get your questions answered, we'll do our best to get them to Reggie and see if we can't get an answer back. Please, please, please wear a mask, wash your hands, and have a safe and wonderful holiday. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your support. Bye-bye.
Bye.